If I were to have met you all even 3 years ago, I'd be telling a very different story. I wasn't at the place where I would say I didn't have much vitality or enthusiasm for life. And that's why I have become such a strong practicer and believer in EFT tapping. And when I first heard about it, I was skeptical. I didn't want another mind body technique. I was tired of getting my hopes up only to feel like I was being let down again. And that was part of a loop that I found myself stuck in of feeling incredibly hopeless that nothing was working. And not to spend too much time talking about my journey, but I had started to feel very unwell when I was about 8 years old. I started to feel like I couldn't keep up with the other kids. I couldn't stay awake in class. I felt this deep, heavy lethargy, and I had this feeling something's wrong with me, something's wrong with me. And that would kind of repeat like a broken record. It would just kind of repeat and repeat. And as my health declined and I got older, shifting into high school and college, I got to the point where I could barely function. And I knew it wasn't just something was wrong with me, something was biologically unwinding in my system. And my first step was to go more of the traditional route of Western medicine. Let's see if we can diagnose, let's see if we can treat. And that opened up the world of Lyme disease and co-infections. There tends to be hot spots. I actually grew up in Massachusetts in the States where it tends to be kind of an epicenter of these tick-borne diseases. You can get them from mosquitoes. There's a lot of different ways you can pick them up. But essentially, that was when I felt like I had finally gotten an answer. I was in my third year of college or university. And it felt like, thank goodness, here's a solution. This is the diagnosis I've been waiting for. I'm not crazy. I'm not making this up. Thank, thank goodness. And now I can move forward with my life. I can get the treatments and all will be well. Little did I know that the treatments at the time were basically high doses of multiple antibiotics. And I would say my health was stabilizing somewhere pretty abysmal. Nothing close to feeling alive or functional. But what happened was as soon as I started treatments, I dropped down to bedbound. I could barely stand up. I felt constantly nauseated, shaky. My vision was basically, it felt like the ground would bubble. Anyways, things things felt a little scary and nightmarish. And that opened up the next, gosh, 5, 6, 7 years of bouncing from practitioner to practitioner, thinking they were the one to save me, only to again get my hopes up and feel like, hmm, not quite what I was looking for. And it was very protocol focused, handfuls of supplements, very rigid diets. And I noticed what started to happen was I started to conceive and see myself as this is the way it's always going to be. I'm just going to be sick. My siblings and friends are going to go off and live beautiful lives, and I'm going to be at home in my bed, withering away for however long that is. And I didn't realize at the time that I was living in this horror story. I can look back now, and that's why I said at the beginning, the story has changed, but at the time, everything felt dark, like it was just closing in. I couldn't imagine a bright future. I couldn't imagine things getting better. And some of you, I know Patrick mentioned this, but are you available with, or are you familiar with DNRS, Dynamic Neural Retraining System? So it's, it is a mind body protocol in the sense that it honors what starts to happen to our psyche and our thinking and our behavior when we have been in the chronic illness space for a while. We become very symptom focused. Of course, coming from a really good place of wanting to resolve the symptoms, but And maybe some of you are familiar with this. You wake up and the first thought is, am I tired? What hurts? Am I better than yesterday? Am I worse than yesterday? Did what I did yesterday cause a flare or a crash? Where am I? There's this kind of this feedback loop that we get stuck in, coming from that really positive place of, okay, we do want to check in with our bodies. We want to check in and know how we're doing. We want to be in tune with what's coming up. But when we've been feeling off kilter for quite some time, we almost become experts at, oh no, what's going on? What's this? And it becomes this unintentional fight, flight, panic reaction that we start to live in. And maybe all of you can think of times where this picks up or kicks up when you are really in a flared up crash state where it's hard to really think outside of that. And I don't want to assume anything about your experience. So again, please interrupt or chime in if that's not the case. But I'd say most people I talk to can really relate where their life starts to feel very body focused. Even eating certain foods, there might be a thought, will this trigger a reaction? Will I feel terrible after? If I eat this food, will I be knocked down the rest of the day, the rest of the week? If I go on this walk, will I have to lay down the rest of the evening? If I take a flight to visit family, am I going to be crashed and flared for the next month? So all of these thoughts, and we can start to categorize them into future forecasting, almost predicting the worst case and visualizing it to be true. So we make it true in the moment. And I think the most common one that I've experienced, and that maybe so many of you have experienced, is future forecasting that we will feel terrible a day from now, 2 days from now, next week. And again, our body starts to clench in anticipation. So we're creating these fear loops without even really realizing what we're doing because it becomes so normal. So if I jump back to my story for a bit, I had no idea that I was creating and feeding and watering states of fear. That was the fishbowl that I was in was just, oh my gosh, oh no, oh no. And my life started to become very, very, very small because I didn't feel safe enough to step into the unknown, even if it could be something fun or life-giving or a moment of connection with a friend. Any possible threat was too much for my nervous system. And we know that the nervous system is closely tied in with the immune function. So when the nervous system is priming for danger, is expecting danger, we will also expect to see abnormalities in the way the immune system works. And I think it's kind of beautiful to see that it's not this mysterious thing of what's going on with the immune system over here. When we can look at the mental state and the nervous system state, because I mean those are one and the same. The nervous system basically colors the way we see the world. So when we start to see, ooh, we're living in a horror story of fear, of worst case scenario, of hyperfixation on symptoms. Of course, everything with the immune system and everything we perceive in life starts to feel colored by that shaky, frantic state. So when I lean back and see this scenario so clearly now, and thank goodness I don't live 100% of my life in there anymore. I get hijacked every once in a while, and I can start to notice, oh, that's an old loop. That's a part of me that is starting to worry, is starting to assume, and future forecast is starting to predict that a certain something, a certain scenario of food might cause a reaction. And I have learned over time to unhook and shift back into a place that is rooted more in trust, in possibility, in in the scenario that things actually might unfold better than I expect. That actually doing something might not cause a flare, it might actually improve my energy. That doing something that might feel a little scary, but deep in my core, I know it's important and it feels meaningful, might actually be the best thing I can be doing. And it can be tricky, right? Because sometimes we might really want to do something, but we have a feeling, well, maybe that might be too much for my nervous system to handle, too much for my immune system to handle, not wanting to cause a crash, not wanting to step into a place that requires recovering or, scaling back again. And it's an art. I think all of you can relate where sometimes there isn't rhyme or reason. You do something, you feel fine, and then you do the same thing 2 days later, and boom, you're needing the 4 hours extra of sleep and canceling all plans, simplifying your calendar. And that's something I want to celebrate. Letting life feel like this creative day by day conversation where, yes, we can make plans and we learn to pivot. Yes, we can get excited for something and then realize, well, actually, the kinder thing for my body is not to push today. And I know with that can come a lot of grief and comparison. Maybe comparing yourself to other people that have no idea what it's like to manage fatigue day by day, moment by moment, comparing yourself to maybe siblings or family members or people you see on social media that have no conception of what it's like to have to modulate and plan. But if we can step back into a place of celebrating that we get to do life differently, not bypassing the grief, of course, but celebrating, okay, we're actually learning discernment because energy is not guaranteed, because feeling amazing every single day is not something we can guarantee. What I find is that the days that we do have a little bit more gusto feel like gifts. And then the days that we maybe require a little more gentleness, a little more tending, more slowing down, more time laying in our bed and resting and breathing, we can honor that we are meeting our body where it's at. Because, and maybe again, I don't mean to assume, but I'm imagining that so many of you have reached points of frustration where you just, maybe earlier on in your journey where you think, well, I can just push and act like a normal person and, pretend and it will all work out, only to feel like, oh gosh, that didn't work. That was too much. I pushed myself a little too much. And I would expect that as part of this, I see it almost like paving the pathway towards how we can actually live the life that this body wants to live, not the life that we thought we would live or that we think someone else is living that looks better. And coming back to the grief, that might come up when you don't expect it, because I do think whenever we step into a life that isn't what we expected, we didn't ask for certain symptoms, we don't feel ready for certain symptoms, depending on when these conditions started to develop for you all. I think they hit people at different times in life. Normally after an extended period of stress, right? It's never just all of a sudden. When we look back, it makes sense. We think, wow, I was really burning the candle at both ends. I was doing so much with school and work, and I was trying to write this book, and I was taking care of my mother, and all of a sudden, whoa, it's too much. So we can honor that our body has actually been adapting and carrying us in the most beautiful way. And when we can slow down and appreciate that our job and our duty now is actually to live a life that allows our body to recover and to rejuvenate and flourish. I find that as a beautiful way to hold the grief and also hold the possibility of who we get to become because of these conditions. And yes, when I put myself back 15 years ago when I was just feeling so hopeless and truly at the point of not really wanting to be here anymore. I felt incredibly envious of my peers and my siblings, seeing them out running and eating whatever they wanted and staying up late, going out dancing. I felt I felt like, what's the point? What's the point of living a life if everything I want to do that looks so fun feels so impossible? But now I'm glad that we're meeting each other now because now I see this as this life path, this journey has opened up a doorway where I get to meet people like you and I get to connect with others that really understand the fragility of this life on such a deeper level, which I think makes a more meaningful experience where, not a day, we don't take a day for granted. We don't take an easier, lighter, more energy filled day for granted. It feels like such a gift. And now I can really start to settle into that and let that be a place to almost anchor into this place of gratitude of I get to do life my own way. I get to do right by my body. And by the way, as I'm talking and sharing more about this experience from doom and panic and hopelessness now to wow, here is a possibility of living a really beautiful, slow life, a life where I actually get to see the flowers open and close and some of my house plants that I probably would have never noticed before. Getting to watch the sunrise and the sunset because I've crafted a slower paced way of living to support my body. It's been so interesting to see now that I can look back how those harder rock bottom hopeless moments have actually opened up this ability to really see the beauty and magic in life and that ability to actually see, not just pretend to see it because I know a lot of people talk about, find the glimmers, be grateful, count your blessings. It's one thing to do the practice, but it's a totally different experience to feel the effect, to not just be swallowed in why me, but to feel, what if all of these symptoms, everything I'm thinking and experiencing and feeling in this very interesting body, this human body, what if this is a gift? And as I say that, I know that can feel very charged for some people, depending, and I never want to assume, but I've, I work with a, a range of clients, and some people are still at the place of, this is torture, I'm being punished, why me, to, I'm starting to see that actually maybe this is happening for my highest good. Maybe this is helping me become and ripen into someone that I never would have otherwise. Maybe this is helping me reconnect with a purpose of helping others that I never would have stepped into if not for these intimate moments of feeling so human and so humbled by this human body that seems to have a life of its own sometimes. So when I think about shifting from that place of hopelessness and grief and comparison and even just complete overwhelm of not knowing what the next treatment is going to be, not knowing what to eat, not knowing who to trust, feeling like we can't even trust our bodies sometimes, not knowing how to pace ourselves. If one day something works and the next day it doesn't, it can feel really unsettling, right? But shifting then to this place of actually, I'm learning to be an expert at navigating this. I'm learning to really tune into my intuition so that I know how to pace myself. I know when something's a yes, and I also know when something's a no. Tapping, EFT tapping is one of the main tools that helped me develop that. And I'm not saying It's the only tool. I'm sure many of you have dabbled in all the realms with all of the ways we can feel better and support our bodies. What I love about EFT tapping, it stands for the emotional freedom technique for those of you that aren't familiar, but the research is showing that it actually does start to change the way the brain is working. If we are stuck in a more fear-based state, the amygdala and the hippocampus and even the limbic system, that more primal region in the back of the brain, can be functioning on overdrive, essentially showing we are in a state of fear. We're not in the present moment. We're not in a state of gratitude or appreciation. We're in a, oh no, what's going to happen? Oh no, what's happening? So, as a very simple and supportive way, tapping can help us shift back into the, okay, what if I am, even though I'm uncomfortable, even though I don't like these symptoms, even though I am exhausted, what if I actually can find safety in this? And not just imagine safety, true safety in the sense the brain function shifts. The amygdala quiets down, the hippocampus starts to quiet down, and the prefrontal cortex, which is more conducive to planning and thinking bigger picture when we can have a bigger perspective of what's happening in our life, that comes back online. And with that, what we notice is that heart rate variability improves. The body can shift into that rest, digest, parasympathetic state that, wouldn't you know, is more conducive to better immune function, to better mitochondrial function, to improved inflammation, improved digestion, all of the processes in the body that tends to shut down when we're in a state of stress. If we can lovingly shift our bodies to a place of feeling held, feeling supported, not only do we feel better, but the body starts to work better. And I love the idea that when we feel better, we heal better. And not by pretending we feel better, but by allowing ourselves to feel better by creating a sense of safety. Because if we can remember what we were like before symptoms started, and I'm talking before we started living in this stress, go, 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 more of a type A approach to life. And I think that's what maybe all of us have in common. We have a history of pushing ourselves way too hard, of doing more than we ever wanted to do. And eventually the body says, no, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore, which is the hidden gift because I don't think we are here to just push and grind. And there is, and I'm not saying there's, that's all bad. I think a lot of us come from backgrounds of maybe even feeling excited about the work that we were doing. But when we look back, we can see, okay, the stress was building and we were just pushing past it. We were getting by, we were managing, and then eventually it just becomes too much. So with these thought loops, and yes, the dynamic neural retraining system was the first kind of my the open door to realizing, oh, other people feel this way too. And even that feeling of, oh, other people feel this way too was another gift in realizing that I'm not alone in this, because that's a key piece of this too, right? It feels so lonely and isolating to feel like our bodies are breaking down or shutting down or not working correctly. And then to step back and see thousands of other people feel this way too. I'm not alone. What I'm grieving, what I'm processing, other people feel this way too. I think when we get into the idea of, oh, this one tool is going to change everything, this one tool is going to heal me, it can set ourselves up for disappointment versus this one tool might be supportive. It might open up pathways. And that's really what tapping is for me. And I'll walk you through it in a little bit here. It's okay when we need more. It's okay when maybe the nervous system work is not the end all be all. And that really is my approach. We want to stabilize the nervous system in the same way that we want to treat ourselves well and nourish ourselves and and honor the body and honor the soul in terms of purpose and connection. And we still might benefit from certain treatments that could really move the needle. A big piece of it, which I think there's commonality with the EFT tapping, is visualization. So when we can flood the body with the chemistry of possibility, when we say imagine ourselves hiking 15 kilometers, traveling, waking up, feeling strong, feeling happy, feeling filled with strength and vitality. And not just visualizing it like we're watching a movie, but feeling it. What does it feel like? What are you wearing? What are the colors you notice? What are the sounds? What do you smell? If you're waking up and you feel full of life, what would you make for breakfast? What kind of music would you be listening to? If you were out on a walk feeling powerful and feeling capable, what would be the details that you take in? So as you start to flood the body with these positive feeling states, what you're essentially doing is you're elevating, you're stepping into an elevated emotion, which is then directly changing the biochemistry. So that's the how. It's directly antagonizing the stress-based physiology that we get into when we're in the oh no. What Sarah mentioned, that the stages when we forget to even smile, where we don't even recognize ourselves, where we're so caught up in feeling unwell. It's actually not just positive thinking because what I've seen is positive thinking backfires. Because at a certain point, the body says, I still feel like garbage. This positive thinking isn't working. Just, saying I'm getting stronger and healthier every day. My body is healing, hooray. That might work for 5 minutes or it might work for a couple of days, but then the next crash we have, then there's a part of us that says, gosh, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of living this way. I'm tired of constantly having to manage symptoms. I'm tired of feeling too tired to walk up the stairs. I'm tired of not being able to socialize the way I want to. I'm tired of being unable to exercise. So I would argue the positive thinking is not actually what heals us. It's more of stepping into the elevated emotion. It's the feeling because the mind, when we step into an elevated emotion, the feeling is what changes the chemistry. Because if we were to just engage in positive thinking, but we don't believe it, an example might be like, I'm healing. Every day I'm healing and getting better. So many of the clients I work with, they say, Teresa, I actually don't believe that I'm healing. And I'm worrying that I'm just going to be sicker and sicker. And I'm worrying that I'm just going to be spiraling. And I'm terrified of what my life's going to look like when I'm 65 or 70. So the catch there, and I'll introduce how we can use tapping in that moment, is to actually, with tapping, we want to honor exactly how we're feeling. So it might sound like I'm terrified of what my body is experiencing. If I'm really honest, I'm feeling hopeless right now. If I'm genuinely honest with you, I'm feeling loads and loads of overwhelming grief for the life I am not living, for the life I thought I'd live, for the family I thought I'd have, for the relationship I thought I'd have. And I'm open to new possibilities. I'm open to being surprised. So, what we do is we have both. We create space for both. We honor how we're feeling. And then we also step into this framework of, and what if life surprises me? Even though I might be doubting that I'll ever get better or that I'll ever get out of this, what if life takes a turn and I start to feel stronger than ever before. So the nuance there is it's not just faking, I'm getting better every day. I'm healing in every possible way. It's even when I doubt that I'll ever get out of this, there's a part of me that's curious. What would that be like? There's a part of me that wonders, what could it feel like to be one of those miracle stories we've all heard about? So that's what I really started to love and feel intrigued by with tapping beyond DNRS, beyond just visualizing and feeling, was this idea of even though there were large parts of in my experience that didn't think it was possible, didn't think healing was possible, didn't think didn't think having a life that felt worth living was possible, I could still engage with these beautiful visualizations by thinking, well, even if I doubt, what if? Because so many of us are very skilled at thinking, what if this terrible thing happens, right? What if I'm too tired tomorrow to function? What if I take that flight and I feel awful for the next week? What if I go out and see that friend or, go out to dinner and feel absolutely run down? We become so good at the terrible worst case scenarios. With tapping, we can start to play with, well, what if actually it works out okay? What if I take this flight and go on this trip to go visit family and I feel stronger and healthier than I ever expected? What if I'm so busy having fun, connecting with family and taking in the novelty around me that I actually feel quite okay? What if, even when I doubt, my body is stronger than I realize? What if, even if I don't believe it's possible, my immune system and my cells are all working in my favor? What if, even when I can't quite see evidence of it yet, things are shifting? I think of this idea of planting a seed, and it might feel like nothing is happening. And then, boom, all of a sudden, months go by and we see a little sprout come through the soil. And I see our bodies a lot like that, where it feels like, wow, why is nothing working? Why is nothing changing? I'm doing all the things. Taking all the supplements. I'm pacing myself. I'm speaking to myself like I love myself. Why is nothing working? And then before you know it, you realize, oh, things are changing. I'm changing. Who am I becoming in this process? And you might start to notice these wonderful moments where you do find yourself more in the moment. You're laughing and smiling again, like Sarah said. You are eating a food that maybe was off limits before, that in the past may have caused a flare, and all of a sudden, it digests perfectly, and you actually felt better after eating it. So I'll have you follow along these tapping points. You can, if you're familiar with tapping, you can just do it with your eyes closed, or you can just listen and repeat in your mind. Make it your own. I have some clients lay on their back and just close their eyes and listen, especially if it's a really symptomatic day, just to meet their body where it's at, because my approach is the kinder and softer we can be, the better. Too many of us have learned muscle through, power through, just push harder. But I know many of you know that's not actually what works. When we're already depleted, when our mitochondria are already pooped, our job is to be even softer, even more loving, to allow them to regenerate and rebound and rejuvenate with care and not with pressure. So if you want to lay down, if I'm tapping with a client or tapping with myself, I'm normally sitting, or sometimes I'll stare in front of the mirror if I'm doing it for myself. But there's no right or wrong way to do it. And there are a series of points that will follow along, starting with the side of the hands. And the one kind of awkward one is under the armpit. on the rib, and it can kind of feel a little funny sometimes to tap, but it's just right about 6 inches or so, or I'm not sure what that would be in metric measurements, but about about a thick chunk of bread underneath the armpit. And all you'll do is tap and repeat after me. And as we go along, just noticing any sensations in the body. You might yawn, you might burp, you might need to stretch, whatever feels natural. Because part of this process is learning to connect with your body in a way not that feels hyper vigilant. Oh no, am I tired? Oh no, do I feel worse than yesterday? Oh no. But in a way of, oh, interesting. Okay, body, what are you trying to tell me right now? What are you what are you hoping to communicate with me right now? And this is a way we can lovingly step in to reconnect with parts of our system that maybe we've grown detached from because the noise of our symptoms have become so strong and so distracting. If we can reconnect to the parts of ourselves that trust, that are open to being surprised, that know that healing is possible because we've seen it in others, that know that the body is built to heal, that the cells are literally designed. I mean, the cells literally, their main goal is to function and to rejuvenate, to clear out and to rebuild. So when we can trust in that and let that carry us and guide us, we start to change. So let's start with a deep breath in. I like to put a hand on my chest and one hand on my belly. Slow exhale. Deep breath in. Slow exhale. One more time, deep breath in. And a slow exhale and maybe a yawn. And when you're ready, repeating after me in your mind. Even though this journey has been difficult and long, I'm learning to trust myself and tend to myself in ways I never have before. Even though it's exhausting, constantly managing, I'm learning to meet my body where it's at and tend to myself in the most loving ways I ever have. Even though this feels like what I didn't expect out of life, I'm starting to see the beauty in this path, in who I'm becoming, and all the gifts that have come with this interesting path that I walk. And then moving to that point right above the eyebrow, actually. And you can tap with one finger, two fingers. Sometimes I tap with 3 fingers. All of the symptoms and exhaustion, side of the eyes, every crash, every flare, under the eyes, all of the uncertainty. How am I going to feel? Why do I feel so low today? under the nose, all of the comparison, longing for how it must feel to wake up in a body that doesn't feel so tired. On the chin, I honor and accept that this has been a lot. And I understand and recognize I've been doing my best. I have been doing my best, and that is something. On the chest, it's allowed to feel overwhelming because this is a full-time job, getting to know this interesting body, this interesting immune system. I'm allowed to be where I'm at because there is no right way to do life. I'm here to walk the path I am meant to be walking. Under the armpits, I am learning to love and support myself, to speak to my body with more love, not less, because of these conditions. All of the fatigue, all of the comparison, all of the frustration, all of the why me? Will this ever end? I honor it. I honor it and open up space to let it transform as I start to see and understand deeply. What if this is happening to help me grow? What is the gift underneath all of this? Where is this guiding me towards a deeper purpose of helping others? Knowing that thousands of people are grieving exactly what I'm grieving. As I remember, I'm not alone. As I start to remember, this is opening up deeper connection to being human, to being humbled and grateful for this life, even when it's not easy. Because here I am celebrating and adapting, learning to smile again as I remember I am so much more than this body. I am so much more than anything that happens in this body. So as I move forward on this journey, I ask myself, how might I use this experience to help others? How might this experience bring me deeper and more meaningful connection with others? When I think about other people that have healed, even the most debilitating fatigue, what if I get to be one of those stories too? What if I get to be someone that inspires and then uplifts others because of what I'm going through right now? What if I am here to ripen in this experience? to become exactly who I am meant to, even when I don't know what that will look like. I'm open to the possibility. What if things turn out better than I've ever expected? What if this chapter of my life, or multiple chapters of my life, lead me to exactly the most meaningful and vibrant life that's better than I ever could have expected? And if there's any doubt, any any feelings of, well, that couldn't happen, just step back into, well, what if it could? Even when I doubt, what if I'm surprised by where this journey takes me? What if life surprises me in ways that I never could have expected because of what I'm going through physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, cellularly? And just playing around with the idea, what if this is a gift? What originally feels like a burden, what if this is actually a gift? Something is developing and ripening in you because of what you are experiencing. And just playing around with the possibility. And when you are ready, squeeze the wrist, either wrist, take a deep breath in, hold at the top. Slow exhale, maybe a yawn. And if you feel like stretching out the shoulders, I like to roll them sometimes and even just stretch the head. And just notice. Maybe you find yourself a little more grounded. Maybe you find your thoughts are flowing a little bit more softly and slowly. Maybe you find yourself open to the possibility that this is actually happening in your favor. These conditions have led you to be connected to all these wonderful people on this call today that you never would have met if not for this unique journey. And I would say that's my favorite part, thinking of the friends I've met across the world that I never would have met if I were out living a normal life. No such thing as normal, but you know what I mean. And to seeing these gifts continue to reveal themselves, finding little tricks that work, something as simple as hydration, oral rehydration solution, and being outside, and little things that start to make the biggest shifts when you least expect it. 8, 9, 10 years in, we find something. And I get to share this with others. I get to share this with others to uplift others. And that gift comes back. And the more we find what works for us, the more we share and we start to notice, we're all starting to do better together. And I can't think of a more meaningful way to spend a life.